Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. This is the Fight for Planet A, our climate challenge discussion about food. So my name is Joe Taranto, and I'm really grateful you could join us today. We were expecting a few more people jumping in as we go, but we'll get started. I'd like to pay my respects to the Wallumattagal people of the Darug Nation, the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on today in Sydney. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and anyone today who identifies as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. I'd also like to acknowledge the many lands of which you come from today, joining me from all over Australia. And I'm very grateful also to have our wonderful speakers with us today. It's my absolute pleasure to host the Fight for Planet A Q&A today, taking up the challenge on food. I am Joe Taranto, the co-founder and director of Good for the Hood. Good for the Hood is a social enterprise started by myself and my neighbour, Karina, back in 2017. Now, I'm the first to acknowledge that I am a pretty average Joe. I'm a single mum of 2 boys. I live in the middle of Sydney, and I grew up in regional New South Wales on a beef cattle farm, which I don't know if it's still okay to admit that or not yet. But I'm not an academic, I'm not a celebrity, I'm not a politician, but I am a really passionate community member. And my passion comes from empowering other people to take action in their communities as well. So 3 years ago, it was time to take up the war on waste, and we were really lucky to work with the ABC and Craig Rucastle on their platform, the first platform to enable communities to take up the challenge when it came to single-use plastics and textile waste. And we're really excited to have been able to partner with ABC again, this time on our climate challenge. It's a pretty big challenge, and to be honest, when we heard about the proposition, we were pretty daunted because we're not climate experts, and to be honest, the problem seems pretty huge. So how do we enable people to take up the challenge on transport, energy and food when often we feel like those things are so far out of our control? But like if you've seen the show and you've acknowledged that there is so much that we can take charge on. And Craig identified very freely last night that if we were all to reduce our emissions by 50% in Australia by just behavioural change, then that's a 15% reduction nationally on our entire emissions. So there's a huge opportunity for us. And what we're going to be talking today is how we can amplify that when it comes to food. So Good for the Hood is a proud impact partner of the ABC's Fight for Planet A. We've been one of the many supporters of the Community Solutions Plan, and which is really a platform that anyone can go on and use, and to design a plan that suits your specific needs for taking action. So if you're an individual who's passionate about doing something at your own home, there's resources for you. But if you're someone like me who thinks, my home's all right, I want to take action to my community and the school I work with and the businesses that are in my neighbourhood, or just the people on my street, then we also have the Community Action Toolkit, which is all about how you can amplify those ripples of change throughout the people in your neighbourhood, or your hood, as we like to call it. So like all the resources we'll be mentioning today, we'll be sending out some links. I'll be talking about some of the fantastic organisations and resources that our panellists work with, and we'll be sharing those as well. And if you're new to Zoom, lucky you, because most of us are over it by now. But all you really need to do is to sit back and relax. You can type questions in the Q&A button in panel, and if you've got anything you want to put in there, we can also chat about what's being discussed as well with your fellow participants. We've had over 120 questions submitted for today's session, and we're going to do our best to answer as many as possible. And if we don't get through them all, don't worry, I'll be giving out Costa's number at the end of the call as well, so you can just call him and ask. So last night's episode, taking up the challenge on food. How do we tackle emissions that come from agriculture and consumption? So if you missed the episode, I'm going to give you a synopsis in a couple of seconds. Craig talked about intensive methane production that comes from ruminants or cows and sheep, and how it's actually their burps and not their farts. that's creating all this potent methane gas. We explored whether feeding cows a seaweed called Asparagopsis would be enough to knock out the emissions coming from cows. I also examined the other component of dangerous agricultural production, which is intensive land clearing, and why creating so much grazing land is causing some challenges for us when it comes to the climate and also biodiversity. Craig looked at the importance of eating fruit and vegetables from local, growers in Australia, but the huge challenges that we have in Australia when it comes to things like drought and water scarcity, and why the food bowls of Australia have really suffered so much in the last few years. We also talked about the fact that when it comes to the climate and food production, as Craig said, there's no magic bullet. There's lots of things we need to do, and we need to keep getting better at those. So with that vein today, that's what we're going to be talking about. How can we tackle those things we need to get better at? And someone who's really great at helping us get better at those things is the wonderful Costa Georgiadis. I'm going to introduce Costa. He's a landscape architect. He's an environmental educator, and he has a beard that makes us all jealous. He's a Logie Award-winning TV host. You've seen him on ABC's Gardening Australia. You've seen him on Get Grubby TV if you've got kids like me. And the thing about Costa is that his great joy comes from sharing his joy of connecting with nature and helping us do it too. This man's been pretty busy, so we're really grateful he could join us. Welcome, Costa. I think you're there. He's on mute. He's muted himself. There he is.
Excuse me. I was just belching. Craig might have heard that one.
How are you, mate?
Mate, I am really good. It's wonderful to be here and be here with our panel and to be a part of what you're really working extensively on in terms of building that local based solutions. I think, like anything, we need the big picture, but we can't let the big picture overwhelm us, as you mentioned. Otherwise, we'll just go, oh, bugger it, I don't care. What can I do? What can one person do? And I feel that the whole essence of this 3-part series, in a 1-hour episode, you can only skate. You really, and I mean, I know it from being involved with stories and finding stories and then writing them and then filming them and then seeing them cut into an episode. You can't tell everything about something, but what the real role at the moment is to have events like that, this 3-part event, but that's just really it was just part of this process, and everything that you're doing in terms of impact and engaging with communities and different touch points, then we can say, yeah, food hits us in lots of different ways. And whether that's the growing of it, whether that's the harvest and the preparation, whether it's the cooking and selling of it in the sense of selling and engaging people, like what Simon and Masterchef does is get people involved with their food in a way that if we can get a small hook into them on that side of their foodie personality, and then start to look at, say, Ellie, who's going to hook them into the responsibilities during the cooking and the growing and looking after the waste as a resource. There's all these ways that we can play to people's personalities and enhance those details. And I know I've just opened up, but I did want to acknowledge that I'm here in Bondi on Gadigal and Bidigal, land of the Eora. And, when it comes to sustainability and resilience, we know that there is so much to learn. And I was just talking to the students in Ipswich at the Youth Sustainability Summit, and I said, just the fact that we can change habits, we can build new processes, and acknowledging not only country, but acknowledging methods, methodologies, information, science, and actions that have been going on this country for a long time by using the language and stirring their language to stir the land, I think we have a great opportunity, and it's happening. So yeah, to me, it's about patience, and it's about, as you said, amplification. We are all amplifiers in every action we take, and there's people watching us.
Well, that is right. We are watching you, not in a non-creepy way too, legally. I'd also like to introduce our next panelist. Thank you, Costa. We're going to come back to you. We've got a lot of questions for Costa today. And they're not all personal either, just a couple that we have had to edit out. I'd like to introduce you to Nick Ray. Nick is the co-founder of the Ethical Consumer Group, which is a community-focused network set up to explore the impact of the things that we purchase every day. And their very popular Shop Ethical Pocket Guide and app focuses on the environmental and social record of the companies behind the common brands that we buy. Nick's really spent over a decade educating people about sustainable purchasing and green procurement. And the other side of Nick is that he's also been involved in initiating the Local Harvest Project, which is a website and a resource for finding good food alternatives that you wouldn't just find in your supermarket. So Local Harvest focuses on eating locally and supporting the growers who grow our food. It's really a national directory, and they also host a Local Harvest Challenge every year. So thank you, Nick. I hear also that you are a fan of playing the mandolin. Not sure it would be useful today, but great to know. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Joe. Yes, it's always good to play the mandolin. I recommend anyone to take it up.
It's a very sustainable instrument, I hear. So Nick, tell us about your passions when it comes to the food challenge that we face.
Well, in a sense, my journey has come out of a lack of information. So answers really come from first asking questions. And we saw a T-shirt decades ago now that said, "Your dollar is your vote. Who did you vote for today?" And it got us asking that question, what do we know about the things that we buy and the hidden impacts that are unseen? And of course, there's a whole plethora of things that entails. Climate impact is one of those things. And so the Shop Ethical Guide has come out of that, us trying to put some answers to those questions and provide resources. I'm really passionate about people having tools to make better choices, because I think often we're very busy. Our lives are full of things, although perhaps less so now. We have a bit more time to think, with especially in Victoria with lockdown.
Yeah, Nick and Simon are both joining us from lockdown today. So yeah, they had all the time in the world to be part of this, which is great. No, that's not true. But yeah, you're right, Nick. I think information is king, and a lot of people were very interested in knowing about that today. So we'll be interested in your thoughts on that for sure.
Great.
I'll introduce next Simon. Simon Toohey is another face that you've probably seen a bit of lately, and not just because his surname links him that, potentially that he was always destined to work with food or booze. So Simon Toohey is an internationally recognised cocktail barman. You may not know that, but we know him as the contestant who's appeared on back-to-back seasons of Masterchef Australia. Beggar for punishment, I think, Simon. But the reason that we love him so much, or that I love him so much, is that he's a massive fan of the humble vegetable, and not just, making it boring and dull, but making it something that is really exciting. You would recognise the beautiful plant-based dishes that Simon's become really well known for. I believe he has a master's in gastronomy. He can make a mean cocktail, and he's now co-founder of the Sustainable Earth Network, which is a really beautiful platform that's creating not only recipes, but content and experiences that you can see, sustainable food, foraging, and all sorts of fantastic recipes and ideas. So welcome, Simon. We're really excited to have you. I think he's gone on mute again too.
Okay, I'm mute.
Thank
you very much. Thank you. I must say it's a master's in gastronomy pending a 15,000 word dissertation. So not fully there yet, but getting close. No one likes
Pretty
writing
close,
as much
mate.
as but thank you. Yeah, my journey has really, although been on that constant trajectory towards food and creativity and stuff, I think recently it's just taken a skyrocket into the atmosphere of craziness, which is my absolute love of plants, and put me at the forefront of people's faces, you know, right on the screen. And I'm honored to be a part of that and to be able to shout as loud as I can to make sure that what we consume is that of a sustainable level, and that is delicious. That's one of the things that we miss in the way of plant-based food and plant-based eating, is we spend so much time knowing, and not my parents are fantastic cooks, but a lot of people that I know as parents and grandparents are known to boil the vegetable to the nines, and you basically mush it with a fork. Now, my job is to create the superficial levels of vegetables and make them taste great. And I want people to realize that not necessarily meat that I'm trying to stop people from eating, but recognize that plants are the things that are absolutely divine. And if we can have our cake and eat it too, then that's the winning point, right?
I like the idea. All I'm picturing is vegetables and cake, but you know, we're good. This is going to be a very lucky lunch is coming. Lucky lunch is coming after this. Thank you, Simon. We're looking forward. We've got lots of questions about plant-based eating and how to make it delicious today. Lastly, our final speaker is someone who I've got to know a little bit over the years, the beautiful Aliska Brambarova, and started ShareWaste with her hubby Tom back in 2016. If you haven't heard of ShareWaste, you'll be checking it out after this, after you hear about the impact that they've made. Originally from Prague, Ellie and her partner Tom wanted to do something about their own food waste when they moved into an apartment in Sydney. They were one of those people that had that challenge of what to do with all of the food scraps that was coming out of their cooking and food preparation, and they didn't have room for compost bins. So what did? They didn't just put their food in landfill, they bloody well came up with a whole app to deal with the issue across Australia. So they now have over 67,000 people who recycle their food scraps by sharing them with other local gardeners or people who have chicken hens. And it is the most grassroots platform to connecting people and keeping that organic waste, which is so valuable. I've got my computer talking to me. They're keeping food waste out of landfill, and they're also helping our soil. So welcome, Ellie. You're also from Sydney. I'm gonna get you to unmute. There you are.
Hi, hi. Thanks for having me. Hi from the Gadigal country. So you pronounce my name so well.
Oh, did I? Oh gosh, yes. Good.
Well done.
And did you ever think you'd be a co-founder of such a successful
platform? I very much identify with what you said at the very beginning. So I'm pretty much a normal girl. I've been in Sydney for 6 years only with my husband. And the reason why we started ShareWaste was that we realized that over 50% of our landfill waste was compostable, and we just didn't want to contribute to landfill anymore. So we were thinking of another solution, and we came up with the idea to create an app which would enable people like us connect with gardeners, farmers who can accept the food waste and return it back to their gardens through composting or by feeding it to their animals. So if anybody,
So yeah, tell us how people can do that.
So ShareWaste is an online platform. Anybody from Australia can register either as a compost host or a food scraps donor. Compost hosts are people with compost bins, worm farms, or farm animals who can accept some excess waste to their gardens or to their compost bins. And food scraps donors is pretty much anybody who would like to compost or who would like to manage their food scraps responsibly, but they have no access to garden, or for some reason they can't start composting themselves. So everybody who lives in a unit this way can have the chance to start composting thanks to a local gardener. So once they register, once they register, they can get in touch with a local compost host and agree on the first drop-off and start contributing to somebody's compost bin instead of landfill.
And I think in this COVID age, when we can't really host anything else, I think being a compost host sounds like a pretty, reasonable solution. I think Simon and Nick probably won't be hosting anyone for a while down in Melbourne. So compost hosting for the win, I say. Well, thank you. That's our wonderful panel for today's chat. And I'm going to throw open to some of the questions that we've already received before we went live. So I had a question from Ashley Pittard, and then some similar questions from Michelle Hopping and Jess Skinberg, if you're with us today, guys. Hi. So Ashley, this is a question for you, Costa. So the questions that they've asked are all around starting that action in their backyard. So those people who are lucky to have a backyard, how do they start their first veggie garden or their first gardening experience, and how can they involve their kids in the experience? I'll get you on mute, mate.
There we go. How's
there
that?
he is.
All right,
how do we start, mate?
Okay, let me just grab something here. Okay, this is a benchtop waste collection unit, otherwise a bucket. And when you join up with your local council, you get one of these in a compost bin. But if you don't have one of those, it's as simple as just using one of these, which every household has. And as long as it's got a lid and you start to separate your food scraps, then you're on your road to start building soil and preparing the soil before you start to plant your seedlings and create investment that you don't want to jeopardize. Just going out there gung-ho, which a little bit of that happened when the panic set in. And everyone went out and said, oh, the food supply system, we're in lockdown, I'm not going to find any food. And everyone's running around buying every seedling between here and Timbuktu and dropping them in the ground, potentially with moderate success, which is a shame because, if you put a $1 seedling in a 1 cent hole, you're not going to get a good return. You put a $1 seedling in a $10 hole that you've prepared with your compost and so on, you're going to get a $1,000 result in that sense. So my approach to it is, don't rush, speak to people, look up on websites, you can read magazines, you can watch Gardening Australia for what that's worth. You're going to see what to do at this point in time. Have a look down in your street, see who else is growing. Talk to them, start conversations. Gardeners are good speakers. Find your local community garden, go for a wander on a Saturday. You'll see the growers there. Get the hints on what you should be doing right now. And just that alone, which doesn't require actually any outlay other than preparation, you'll then arrive at the start point ready. And then you'll find a much smoother road without the heartaches and the grief.
And a follow-up question to that, Costa, is about soil. How do we make sure that the soil that we're growing our food in is safe? Is there any quick ways that we can check that? That was from Hannah Rochelain and Henry Muniz. Yeah,
hi Hannah, hi Henry. The two H's are combining forces there. Probably the simplest way, if you do have concerns, particularly if you live in the inner city of some of the bigger cities, whether that's Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane, where there was a lot of industry and also lead-based fuel and also lead-based paint. What you can do is there's a place called Veggie Safe. I'll put it in the chat. I'll put the link there in the chat in a minute. And you can take a soil sample, send it off, and they will test it for 16 or more different potential toxins and give you the green light. If there's a problem, then all you need to do is put a separation layer in there, which could be something like some gravel or road base or potentially wood chip if it was a chicken coop to prevent prevent the chickens from getting down there with a road base underneath. So there's options you can do, but veggie safe would be the way to go if you want to get the green light so that you're not potentially drawing up lead and other toxins into the veggies.
Fantastic. Thanks, Costa. Now, I've got a question for Nick here from Kerry Anderson, and a very similar question came in from Chantel Bostal and Gregory Davis. They want to know, Nick, about whether you think it would be a good idea if we were able to pick up our products and tell from the packaging what kind of food miles, what kind of carbon production or sustainability rating was given to that product. What are your thoughts on that? And is it something that would be a simple process, or is it a long way off, you think?
Look, I think it's a fantastic idea, and it would make it so much easier, wouldn't it, if we could just say thumbs up or thumbs down to a product. It is relatively complicated in terms of assessing that carbon footprint. And even some of the things that are thrown around they depend on some different things. In terms of methane actually is something that disappears from the atmosphere really quickly compared to CO2. So that changes some of those things. But there are some things you can do in terms of looking at your products to know sort of where they've come from in the broader sense. So country of origin labelling is one of those things, which is obviously looking at if products are made in Australia or produced in Australia and the ingredients are sourced in Australia. So in a sense, avoiding imported products does cut down food miles significantly. Yeah. And there's some other labelling, useful labelling resources like carbon footprint labelling. Not much of that around, but yeah, that can be good.
Thanks, Nick. I certainly know that it was interesting seeing Craig last night rank the foods based on the emissions produced. And you know, whilst we all had that feeling that beef was going to be the biggest producer of greenhouse gases, it was any product that's been flown here, you know, which was the asparagus in refrigeration is going to be a big emitter. So, but like they say, how do we know whether something's being freighted here or flown here? It's just not a simple process. So, yeah, I can understand that challenge. I'm going to throw over to Simon now. We had a question from Claudia Wijaya, who said, you know, as a student still living at home with not much control over what I buy, how can I make choices when it comes to food that will be more sustainable? Or it might be the question, Simon, how to persuade the people who are buying the food that they need to reduce some of those other products. You're just on mute, mate.
Cool. It's a really good question, because I was kind of stumped for a second. They're going, gosh, how much pulling power do children have when it comes to the parents cooking dinners at night time? And, you know, parents coming home after a long day of a 9 to 5 or whatever their job is, and then having to sort of hear their kids go, I don't want this, when really all they really want to do is feed them and get them sort of satisfied and move on to the next part of the day or the evening. But I think what we need to look into here as students and as a voice is a couple of things. One is cultures of food. Cultures of food is a big one, because if you look at things like Indian cuisine, you know, over 50 million Indians are vegetarian. So there's a first point there. And a person who is obsessed with Indian cuisine, especially at the moment, it's a bit ridiculous, that I know that I can extract a lot of flavor through spices and through a combination of spices. And those are what draw amazing amounts of flavor and add flavor to things like beautiful eggplant, whether it's tomatoes or a wonderful chickpea curry, things like that, you know. I think the parents then have a fear that the kids aren't getting enough protein or enough nutrients from certain ingredients. And it's not entirely true when it comes to certain plants. You know, certain types of protein are different when it comes to meat, but if you have a look at hemp, for example, it's an amazing source of protein, and also any other legumes are really great for that element too. So having a look at dal, an Indian style sort of thickened soup using wonderful spices. And the thing I love about Indian cuisine is they believe every single spice has a medicinal value to it, and that medicinal value is what's kept them alive for so long and so healthy. It wasn't the opening borders of sugar that was what created their dietary and their by the by. Anyway, so have a look at things that are different cultures using different ingredients that are plant-based. Not only that, but mushrooms, a great alternative for meat. You make a lasagna using mushrooms as the ragu, as the thickening sauce with tomatoes and onions and celery, and that's your meat layer. Fantastic, things like that. And then finally, have a look at also a peasantry or old school style dishes where a lot of the time, historically, people with less money or farmers didn't really have the means to have constant amount of meat. It was a luxury in most times. And so a large percentage of the food, and if you look at Italian or Spanish as well, if you look at Italian, a lot of their pastas can be or are plant-based. And there's a great one as well. So that's a really nice way of looking at it. And then if you think about kids and what they're doing at the moment, especially with this climate campaigns and their wonderful world of leaving school on a Friday, you have the power to change other people's opinions. And so you have the power to tell your parents, I'm sorry, but I want to have 1 day, 2 days a week where I have plant-based food, and I think we should try this out. You have the power as children. Don't ever say you don't.
Fantastic. I'm just glad my kids aren't on this call. And I am very hungry, Simon. Feeling very hungry now. Would like someone to cook me some Indian food. I got a question now. Thanks, Simon. I got a question now from Naomi Wa, Anita Wool, and Carly West. Now, all of these guys were interested, Eliska or Ellie, about the way to manage food waste when you have really minimal space, either a really small garden, a very small balcony, you live in a multi-unit dwelling, or you just don't have access to composting facilities. What's the best solution in your mind, Ellie? Just get you to go on mute.
So that's exactly my own situation. There are a few options you can choose from. So as Costa showed before, you can have a benchtop container where you can keep all your scraps, and then you can refrigerate them or freeze them until you find a compost host through ShareWaste. So that's one of the options. The other option would be to use a bokashi bin or a bokashi bucket. But for bokashis, you still need access at least to a verge or to a small garden patch where you can dispose of the bokashi waste. So that would be the two options. People can also reach out to local community gardens. Some community gardens accept food scraps, or see if there are any local composting programs through the council. So at the moment, I think there are quite a few options. And if there is nothing, you can always register with ShareWaste and spread the word. And I'm pretty sure somebody will show up soon.
Right. Thank you, Ellie. That's fantastic. I've got now a question, which might be for Costa and Nick, on the back of what Ellie's just said about community gardens. Where can people find community gardens? And if they don't have one in their community, what can they do? And this also goes for permaculture communities as well. Where can people find these groups? And if they don't have one, what's the best way of starting one or finding out some more information? This is from Jess Darwell. And we also had a live question there from Joe about permaculture as well and getting started with that. Do you want to start, Costa?
You were leaning forward there, Nick.
I was going to jump in and take your thunder there, Costa, but go for it.
Sorry.
No, go on. Go. I enjoyed that. You came charging forward, so I'll run after you.
Oh, okay. Look, I'm really excited by community gardens because they're two things, aren't they? They're people getting their hands dirty in terms of really growing food, growing their own things, but also working together. And I think one of the takeaways, the keys of us moving forward in this realm at this time is to know that it's actually, all of these things are really hard when we're doing it by ourselves. So One of the ways to do that is to garden with other people, with community gardens. The website that was mentioned before, Local Harvest, is one resource where you can put in your postcode and see what resources are around you. And that includes a whole lot of different things, including community gardens and food co-ops and organic retailers. So that's one place to start. And I suppose a web search as well. The right words will get you the right results.
Fantastic. Costa, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I've just thrown up on the.
Thrown up.
Just placed on the chat. The Community Gardens Australia, which was formed up until only a couple of months ago, it was known as Australian City Farms and Community Gardens Network. Basically now it's Community Gardens Australia, and then you'll see there's umbrella groups for each of the states, and some local areas. But the amount of quality information that's on that site, particularly some of the work from Russ, Grayson and Fiona in terms of having worked at a lot of the original community gardens and put them through the rigours and the filters of council logistics, and all of those steps are there. But then as you were saying, Nick, like when you think about the definition of community, your community garden is your family. So there's that connection in terms of you and the children and the family, be it the grandparents and any other relatives nearby. Then you have your street garden, which again is a community garden. So my street verge engages people. I have a visit every single day, like clockwork, at 4:30 by little Max and Alyssa, because they want to come up and visit the worms and say goodnight to them for the day. And like that to me, and this here, this is the leftovers.
That's a full beard close up there, mate. That we'd have to pay for that next time, I reckon.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I forgot that the cassowary was on. Hey, you say, Nick, about doing it together. Like I get a knock on the door randomly on, I don't know what day it was, Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and there's Maxie and Alyssa, and they want to give me, he's had his birthday party and he wanted to give me some cake. And like, this is what this whole discussion is about. The power is in the community. And when the community shifts the narrative, and that's what's happening with a lot of this, the community is driving the change. And I'll just, I did a tweet last night while the show was on, and I said, which one? I'll just here. Sometimes the only way to change the status quo is for community to rewrite and engage new narrative. Community rubber on the road creates the current that drags change across the line under its own steam as momentum takes its course elsewhere as actioned. So it's the actions of people that build the momentum, and it's that community, the momentum that will help drive this change and give the leverage for the community to be empowered and stand up and go mongrel and say, well, we're changing 15 to 30%. Let's go hard now at the corporates, at the politics, and at the big end of town and say, well, if we're doing 30, you get in too, without it being this kind of them and us. It's like, no, here we are. We have license because there's our facts and our actions. Now you come to the party.
I think that's pretty powerful stuff, Costa. So thank you. Big close up and all. I'm going to completely jump over to a very hot topic, which came out of last night's episode as expected, and is something we always expect to come out when we talk about food and climate. And that's about, the move towards a vegetarian diet, or reducing our meat intake, or becoming plant-based, or God forbid, saying the V word, becoming vegan. So I'm going to throw this out to you, Simon, because you obviously use a lot of plant-based meals and recipes. Do people feel that there's a real need to put a label around it? And in this being vegetarian, the answer to the climate challenge in your eyes? What are your thoughts? I think I need to unmute you again, mate.
You're in charge of the mute on my end. I keep hitting
Am
off
I?
mute and it doesn't let me do it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
mate.
Not
That's,
that it matters. I'll
all
just
control, no
response, Welcome to my world. The vegan word, it's a tough one because I think in so many ways the term veganism creates a level of extremism, and I'm not a fan of that. I don't necessarily, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be or that it's a bad thing at all, far from it. It's just, I think it's slowly created this negative connotations, whereas my angle is about plants and the celebration of a plant-based foods. But we also, coming back to that question, we can't hide the fact that the number one biggest problem on that table of food that he showed at the Melbourne show was the asparagus from Mexico. And this is, I think, the most important thing to look at, because I can say plants are the most important thing and it's going to help with the climate, changing the climate. It's definitely a positive change for sure, without a doubt. But if we're not conscious of where we're buying our food from in the first place, then we're actually not going to make a change at all, because all we're doing is buying. I know very well that all our asparagus come wintertime, outside of spring, and that short stint comes straight from Peru or Mexico. It's huge levels of asparagus come across the ocean. And so that's where the issue is as a part of it in the plant-based world, right? Now, if we turn across to the meat-based world, there is definitely issues there. And that's, to be fair, I have opinions on that, but it's out of my realm. My job here is to go, let's try to make plants the best possible things to eat. And if we can get people to change their mindset on that, then I think that's fantastic. And I think they can enjoy it just as much as I do. And with the group of us here, obviously, with that sort of push as well, it creates a stronger front to get people to move that way. The next question I have as well as of watching the show last night was, feeding the seaweed, the
Asparagopsis.
Yeah,
Asparagopsis.
That's it. To the cattle, is that a better idea to fix the situation to create the constant consumption of animals, or is rewilding the land and putting more cattle on a farmland and looking backwards to create something forward, is that a better way to look at sustainable eating? Because as far as I can tell, dehydrating 50,000 tons of kilos of tons, sorry, I can't remember my notes are, of this seaweed that has to go into feedlots, which is already a negative connotations in the world of eating meat. Is that a positive change because we're keeping feedlots, or looking at organic plants out in the fields, pasture fed cattle, and rewilding the land? Is that a better option? Now, there's a question that I don't know the answer to, and I think everyone else probably has an opinion on that as well. My biggest point is eat well and look at the environment, eat a plant-based diet.
And we had a couple of follow-up questions. Everyone's quite interested in this move to plant-based meat. Simon, are you a fan or are you not a fan?
Look, I am and I'm not. I mean, my partner is we pretty much both eat 100% plant-based every so often. We have a little cheat day, but her biggest thing is she does crave that element of the texture of meat, and so plant-based meat, fixes that sort of craving. The difficulty I have with plant-based meats is it's still early days. I mean, I think the recent sort of Impossible Burger, it was called, cost $5 million because they made one and it took them however long to do all the science to get there. But the idea for me is this plant-based produce is fantastic when it hasn't got the copious amount of stabilizers, the chemicals to keep them there, the salts and the problems with that, which is huge, the sugars, the mass amounts of E numbers that are keeping things shelf stable. Now, when we can reduce all those and make these plant-based things less about ingredients and more about beautiful and flavor, and then we can call it something else. And so therefore it no longer has to be a meat-based product. It is its own category that has nothing to do with the words that are meat or milk or anything at all. And that's what I think we're succeeding in that instance. But I always.
I hope you've already got your trademark sorted there, mate. It sounds like you're ahead of the game there.
That off the desk as we go along.
Click. So Nick, on that, you talk a lot about ethical and sustainable eating. How much does avoiding processed foods and over-packaged foods play into that when it comes to buying ethically? About 6 people ask about that.
Yes. Well, I suppose from my perspective, cutting out as many steps in a process from where something's grown or produced initially to us consuming it is actually, it's good for many reasons. And one of those is to do with transparency. We usually know more about something when, at the extreme, we've grown it ourselves. We know everything about it. But if you're buying something from a farmer's market and you can talk to the producer and find out the backstory, that's a lot better. At the other extreme, we have an industrialized, highly processed system of production that's often traveling huge distances to get to us. It all points to the fact that the steps forward are actually journeying along that path towards more connection with our food. And that means cutting out the middlemen where possible. So we got some chickens just at the start of lockdown. We thought the kids needed some less screen time activities, and we have 12 chickens. And so in terms of the carbon footprint of eggs, which is relatively high, because they're our own chickens, the whole factory farmed process behind that is taken out of the mix, and it has a lot lesser of a carbon footprint. So it's a really good thing.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about the process of food production, just how intensive and involved it is and how far things need to go to be packaged and reproduced and then brought to the shops and then brought to our homes. And then, something I was going to say to you, Ellie, a third of our food is going to waste ultimately because we either don't eat it, before it goes off, or we're not storing it correctly. How much, of a role does preventing food waste play when it comes to reducing our emissions?
So quite a lot. So according to the Compost Revolution, up to 50% of regular Australians' landfill waste is actually made of food scraps and food waste, which is huge. We also realized that when we had a look in our own bin, actually, I think in our case, I would say 60-70% of our general landfill waste was compostable. So that was why we started composting. And once we put recyclables away, there's very little landfill waste. So I think starting composting is a huge step towards reducing your carbon footprint. And once you can compost locally in your own backyard or together with your neighbor, you're also cutting down on emissions through transport, because waste management needs a lot of waste management cars, and there are a lot of transport emissions around it. So there are 2 ways how you can reduce your footprint simply through composting.
Fantastic. And we've just had a quick live question from Katrina saying, what are some of the tips for ramping up your compost and getting your neighbours to drop off scraps and not straps? I don't know what a strap is. That's a different chat. For getting neighbours to drop off scraps, and how can they do it contactlessly? Ellie, has ShareWaste been affected by COVID at all?
Yes, we have more people signing up.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's, for the reason that a lot of community gardens, composting programs and compost hubs were actually closed. So we have quite a new donors registering with ShareWaste and looking for local drop-offs. Hi, Katrina. Katrina is one of our really enthusiastic and keen composters from Melbourne. So
fantastic.
It's good to see you here.
We'll give you Simon and Nick's address, Katrina, and you can drop off some scraps to their house. Actually, no. Is that an essential service? I don't know. Can you leave the house to compost? Does anyone know the answer to that? I don't know.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Okay. I'm not advocating breaking the law.
If it's a walk, if it's an essential walk, you can take a short walk around.
All right. So bucket in one hand, phone in the other. headphones, go for a run and drop it off, and it's all part of it. I think it's fantastic. Genius. Well, guys, I'm going to throw open to all of you now to give your little 2 cents about how you stay positive for the planet. So we see it all the time, particularly when we're switched on to talk about environmental issues. There's an awful lot of doom and gloom. There's an awful lot of really challenging issues that come from the climate crisis and all of the environmental degradation and all those things. And a lot of people are wanting to know, how do you stay positive when sometimes it feels hopeless or the future feels a little bit bleak? I'll start with you, Simon, because you're there and you're not on mute, and I don't want to mess with it.
First time for everything. I'm learning, and it's already, we've only got a couple minutes left, and I've only just started learning about how to get this thing going.
It's all right.
Oh gosh, where do you start with this? I just feel as though sometimes you have to surround yourself around people who are positive. There is a big thing there. We spend so much time watching the news, and I can watch the news at 7 o'clock on the ABC, and I know that there may be one positive article within the half an hour, and it's usually something to do with either the weather, because it might be sunny tomorrow, or the goodbye. You know what I mean? Like, there's just never really anything that makes me feel good about what's going on, especially now. So who is it that I love, that I want to hang out with? Who is it? And for me, it's my amazing partner. It's talking on Skype with people like my folks and my brother and his wife. And it's also my really close friends nearby. And we just got ourselves a little puppy. So there's another thing that's positive. I'm not saying go out and buy a puppy, far from it. What I am saying is surrounding yourself through positive change. And that's the Sustainable Earth Network on our Insta and some of that. Everything we post up with the Sustainable Earth Network is for positive change, which is what I love. And if we go hand in hand with Damon Gamo, with the film 2040, that idea of positive change is the key to success. And we always have our down days. I don't deny that. I do get down sometimes, but there are people there that lift me up because I surround myself with them.
Fantastic, Simon. We'll jump to you, Ellie. How do you stay positive?
Exactly, just like Simon said, I surround myself with positive people, and simply by attending events like this one, where everybody's positively charged and everybody's trying to do something positive and something beneficial for their surroundings and for their friends and their community, that really helps me keep my head up and look to the bright side.
What about you, Nick?
Look, I suppose the emphasis for me is not about saving the world as such, because that's a huge job and no one can manage it, but rather being responsible for my own choices where I can, and I feel I can. So it sort of brings it down to the small, in a sense, but the real. And the other thing that's worth noting, I think, is the idea of a gift of intention. I can't even say it. Being intentional, basically. It is a gift to be able to do that, and that actually rubs off on other people. So when you choose to act in a certain way, in a positive way, it's kind of changing the planet in a small way. Other people see that, and it starts to redefine a new normal. So, and that's what we're on about, really, in terms of transforming the world. It's redefining what is normal. Yeah.
And Costa, I don't think you've ever struggled with being negative, mate, but no, how do you stay positive? You are a very upbeat character, but I'm sure you have moments where you think, oh, geez, this is rough.
Well, Nick, you just pumped up my tires, mate, even more, listening to what you said then. But yeah, look, I suppose I look at it in a couple of sort of big picture ways that just inform my actions. And one is, I think if I were to be asked by any one of the following generations next week or next month or next year or in 50 years or at my deathbed, what did you do with the knowledge that you have? So the difference between being ignorant or not being informed, and that's the difference. But when you are informed and you're not taking action, then that's a story. So if I get asked that, I'd say I'm out there swinging every day. I've been swinging every day, and I will keep swinging until they compost me. So that's kind of, that informs it. So, you know, I go down to the beach for a swim this morning. Every morning I'll pick up, you know, just like take 3 for the sea, pick up 3 pieces, but I'm not beholden to that. If there's 5 pieces there, I pick it up. Now, I don't have a megaphone and say, excuse me, you running past in the activewear, did you see me pick up some pieces? I just do it. But I know that there's people watching that, and I'm not watching them to see if they're watching me. I don't give a damn about that. I just do it because then when I go down to the beach and there's not plastic and paper blowing around, I go, that's the kind of beach I want, and it's the kind of beach I want for the children that I engage with. And it's the same with the soil. What's the sort of soil that I'm going to leave? What are the plants that are going to grow in that to provide the insects to become food for the birds, to bring the native birds back in, that re-engage the biodiversity of my part of the world? But that's enough to then engage and inspire and illustrate others through, whether they walk past and I'm not here, or little Maxie and his sister coming up every day and checking on the worms, and him going, oh, can I hold them and can I do that, so that there's no fear. So for me, it's about our obligations and duty, not privileges and rights. And I just think on that level, every single day there's so much I can do, and ultimately it's about sharing that so that others take it on, not be told. They go, oh, I'll try that, or I'll just pick that up. So yeah, I there's 17 lifetimes of things to do because I want to. So yeah, makes me happy.
You are happy. And that was a beautiful question from Laurie Hunter. So thank you for asking that, because I think that's a really lovely note to finish our panel chat on today. I'm sorry that we haven't been able to get to the 120 questions, but we have tackled quite a few. And obviously these are areas that we could spend, you know, a day on just a single topic. So thank you all for submitting your questions and being such an enthusiastic and passionate group of people who are obviously wanting to take action. I've put 2 links in the chat box there. One is to the Community Solutions Plan on the ABC website. If you haven't completed yours yet, there's a beautiful carbon counter which you can use through ABC Science. And there's also the Community Solutions Plan, which you can design up your own plan to take action, whether that's at home, whether it's in your school, whether it's in your community. There's so many resources, and the ABC has so many fantastic partners that they've engaged to create sort of tools for you. So check it out. You can design one up that will be just to meet your needs. And I've also created a link there to the Fight for Planet A Facebook group, which has started about 3 weeks ago. It's already got 600 really passionate community members who are posting ideas, thoughts, resources, recipes, solar solutions, apps. So if you're looking for that bit of inspiration to take action, or maybe some advice, it's a really positive place to share ideas. And I'm so grateful to our 4 panelists for joining me today. Thank you to Simon, Nick, Ellie and Costa for your time and for your inspiration and leadership with what you do. I will be sharing links to all of their organisations, resources and material, and anything else that Costa or any of us have shared from the chat box will come out to you today. Thank you for being part of our chat. If you haven't seen the Fight for Planet A, please check it out. It's on iView and it'll be on there for probably a few weeks yet. Such a fantastic conversation. It's a conversation Australia needs to have. And we hope that you can take up your own climate challenge and that we can tackle these issues together. Thank you all. We'll see you soon.